Greetings and welcome to another video by Sir Mike the Hedge Knight. We have our last new character for 2025 in the game. It is Bran Stark. In addition to the Stark family, we haven't seen a new Stark in quite some time. Bran Stark, the Fugitive of Winterfell, and you'll see he's got his direwolf next to him, and there's a little icon next to his might, that little hat helmet, which we saw when we looked at the Night King. That's the symbol for a minion. So Bran's direwolf Summer will be with us as well. So he is a green strategist. Looking at his stats, as we know with strategists, typically very balanced, nothing over the top, decent amount of hit points, neither his attack nor defense at 50k, so doesn't seem like too much of power creep here, at least in terms of his stats. Now, as we did with the Night King, we'll have to look at active skills, leadership, and passive, both for Bran, and in this case for Summer. With the Night King, it was for the Night King and for his minion Whites. Diving right into active skills for Bran, it's a slow speed skill. Bran wargs into Summer. Summer reinforces the battle, entering with 60% hit points and 75% stamina, temporarily replacing Bran. And they kind of explain this in the Discord and I think on their official site a little, so because at first it was a little bit vague. But Bran, when he uses his skill, will become Summer. Summer will replace Bran, and Bran sort of goes into stasis. I believe his hit points get locked in. I assume his positive and negative, his buffs and debuffs, I assume that stays the same. He just sort of disappears for a while, and Summer is there until Summer is defeated. And when Summer is defeated, Bran comes back in, I believe exactly as he left when he warged into Summer. So this is pretty interesting because we're seeing a lot, and we saw with the Night King as well, the use of this reinforce ability. And reinforce has always been in the game for a handful of characters, but Bran into Summer, Bran reinforces into Summer, Summer gets killed, reinforces into Bran. Well, if you get Bran's skill off again, he just brings Summer right back, reinforces into Summer. Now Summer, when Summer gets killed, reinforces back to Bran. So there's a little bit of a chain there, and it kind of makes me think, as unthematic as this sounds, that a Night King Bran combination, they're supposed to be arch enemies, could do pretty well because the Night King does well. He has an AoE attack gaining an omen every time an ally reinforces. So if you had the Night King and Bran uses his skill, becomes Summer, well, that's a reinforcement. Summer gets defeated, he turns back to Bran, that's a reinforcement. Now the Night King raises dead people, that's a reinforcement, all the while adding omens. So I don't have enough resources to get both of them to a usable level, but it really makes me think that there could be a combination here that could be absolutely devastating and thematically make absolutely no sense. Absolutely no sense. Bran and Summer working with the Night King, the three-eyed Raven working with the Night King, but something to consider and something that really makes me want to get the Night King. I wound up spending my gold on Bran. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And I do think the Night King is a better character, but I think the two of them together could do some very, very interesting things. So that is the active skill from Bran. All he does is he becomes Summer. 60% hit points, 75% stamina. Switching over to Summer's active skill, he strikes an enemy for 250% attack physical damage, so pretty decent single target attack, nothing spectacular, but it's fast speed. So for a 250% attack, a lot of characters, I think Purple Stannis has a fast speed skill, but he's doing like 100, 110, 115%. This is 250%, and his attack is not weak. Then deals an additional 50% attack physical damage for each ice on the target, and I really like this. There might be, so I don't know the epics all that well as some of the legendaries. So I know Red John has something with Northern Gift, and Green Arya might do something like that. But what I saw on the fire side of things, like Red Daenerys, does AoE damage and then does additional damage based on how many stacks of fire. are on the enemy, and I don't recall seeing it on the ice side. One of the complaints about these ice slash Stark teams, because they're so intertwined, is you get things to brittle, and then you just kind of hope you can do enough damage when things are brittled, because they're not a gem damage team. They're built they're built around Ned and King of the North, who are protectors. They don't have big attack, so you've got some healers in there. You've got Sansa with a defense, but you need a little bit of a nuke. And it seems to me like perhaps this is the Stark answer to that. And also, being that Bran Summer are green, they're good against the big blues. So when you're going against another Stark team, and it's like, oh, how am I going to take out Ned? You can't brittle Ned once he's 5-star. It's going to take forever to take him down. Now you have a green offensive character who does even more damage when you build up. So maybe you can't brittle Ned, but you can stack some ice on him. And if you've got 5 ice on a character, now Summer, instead of doing 250% attack physical damage, is doing 500%. That's a nuke. That's a nuke, folks. And doing that nuke against a blue character, a Sam or King of the North, or all the big blues that we see all the time in Raid, that is that is pretty powerful. So that's what we have for active skills. Now, the leadership ability we have is essentially the same for Bran and Summer. We'll just take a look back and forth. Anytime an ally reinforces the battle, Bran afflicts all enemies with 1 ice and gains 25% stamina. Now, the stamina, I believe, is at 5-star. I've already gone through the Proving Grounds. We'll talk about that again in a little bit. But I feel like when Bran warged into Summer, it triggered the ice and the stamina. So, like, is Summer an ally to Bran and Bran's an ally to Summer? Off the top of my head, I don't recall. I think that it does. And if that's the case, remember, Bran, when he wargs into Summer, Summer comes in with 75% stamina. Well, here's the other 25%. So if that works, if that is correct, then when Bran wargs into Summer, Summer will come in with full stamina, get to do his hit right away. So that is pretty interesting. And when we click on the tab for Summer, same thing. Anytime an ally reinforces the battle, Summer afflicts all enemies with 1 ice, gains 25% stamina. I think when Summer is defeated, he turns back to Bran. I think that's considered a reinforcement and would trigger this ice. And this afflicting all enemies with 1 ice, this is pretty powerful stuff. I mean, we're in the middle right now, as Bran was released, was perhaps by design, was the week that Rob's War, the event Rob's War, uh, was in the rotation. As we know with Rob's War, trying to apply ice and bleed. So anytime you see someone that can apply ice to multiple enemies, it's something that raises the eyebrow a little bit. And what I really like is, unlike a lot of these other AoE ice characters, there's no percentage here. It's not 90% or 70. It's just ally comes in, reinforces, all enemies get an ice, period. Period, the end. Apply a bunch of ice. Really good thing. Don't have to worry about RNG. I know in Rob's War, I've had Lord of Bones at 75%. He'll hit 3 enemies, none of them get ice. I mean, it's a rare thing, but it happens. And it's frustrating. So, not a bad leadership ability. However, until they do the faction update, which I'm still dreading, by the way, but until they do that, when you're building an ice team, you have a whole bunch of Starks on there as it is. Like, I don't know anyone that reinforce, like, you're not going to have Beric there. King of the North Jon Snow can revive, which is a reinforce as well, but only when he's leader. If he's leader, then Bran can't be leader. So while I like this ability, unless it's Bran to Summer and Summer to Bran, who else on my Stark or Ice synergistic team is reinforcing? And if the answer is none, boy, that's unfortunate, because I think it's a really strong ability, and I'd like to work around that ability. But then I guess I'm making an ice team without a bunch of Starks. Am I making an ice team with Beric and Thoros and the skeletal white? Like, perhaps Bran can do enough ice on his own between warging and Beric coming back and the white coming back. Is there a way to do that? Not really sure. Moving on to his passive. And this, again, leads itself toward sticking within the faction. When a Stark team member, which I assume would include Bran, it doesn't say an ally, it says just team member. When a Stark team member uses their skill or an ally gem is destroyed, so this is a little different. You could trigger it with any ally gem. So maybe you start looking for ally pairs. When a Stark team member uses their skill or an ally gem is destroyed, Bran has a 50% chance to afflict a random enemy with one ice, then gains a 15% hit buff. Hit used to be called accuracy. I think certain places in the game it still is. Accuracy is the chance to land debuffs weighed against an opponent's tenacity. So unless an opponent has a tenacity buff, don't really have to worry about this hit slash accuracy buff so much. So as far as passives go, yeah, it's okay. It's you may or may not put one ice on one random enemy. I mean, it's nice. And I guess if you're on a team of all Starks, and again, so talking about the upcoming faction changes where they're going to encourage you not to use five members of the same faction, then this becomes weaker. But if you've got five Starks on your team, as people are using off skills, you're firing off skills and the occasional allied gem, perhaps Ned and Cat, something like that. You know, King of the North and Ghost. You'll pop off a random ice here and there. I mean, it's okay. It's not great. If you're putting together an ice team, you're trying to get people to brittle. So of course, all ice is welcome, but you probably have a bunch of other ice dealers on your team, active or passive. Passive being like a Rob Talisa, and active being Woodland Archer, all those King of the North, all those good things. So this is okay for passive. Switching over to Summer's passive, Summer has an innate 40% dodge chance. That's pretty good. Dodge is the ability to completely avoid damage and I believe effects from enemy skills and abilities. And a lot of times when we see dodge, we see like 15% and 10, and you're like, all right, that's just not going to trigger enough. 40% is a pretty decent amount, and that can swing the battle. And on top of that, when Summer dodges an enemy skill, that enemy is afflicted with ice. So again, the passive adding ice seems like it's a little few and far between. So while Summer is on the battlefield, is he going to be targeted with the skill? Maybe. If he is, will he dodge it? Maybe. And if he is, he throws an ice on the person that puts a skill on him. I mean, it's not like Summer has taunt, so he can attract all of the single target attacks from the enemy. And even if he did, then he works. If he doesn't dodge, he would get hit pretty quick and revert back to Bran. And Bran's big thing is turning into Summer. So that's pretty much what we've got for Bran and Summer. I mentioned before the Proving Ground. I did spend my gold on Bran. I've got him halfway between 4 and 5. Wish I could get him to 5 for that 25% stamina boost as leader. Still thinking about using some more resources to chase that down. But I feel like Bran is a good character. I know someone that I spoke with that thinks Bran is like an essential character and become the best Stark character. And I said, I don't know about that. I think he'll be good and I think he'll be useful. But I really just don't like that reinforce. His leadership ability seems really good, but no one on the Starks does it. So I know we're going to get Ghost's iconic soon. Like if Ghost's iconic is Ghost dies, comes back to life, then that adds something like, hey, now I have someone else on the team that can help trigger Bran's leadership ability. I do like that he is a nuke, but he's a nuke when Summer has their skill going. Now, Summer doesn't come in at full hit points. He comes in, even with maximum skills, he comes in at 60% hit points. He does come in with a bunch of stamina. So, he does a pretty good single target attack. As leader, he can hit all enemies with ice only when someone reinforces. Both of them have a passive that may or may not put some ice on people. I think the best thing about Bran is going to be tough to kill because Bran turns into Summer, Summer dies, he just goes back to being Bran. As long as you can get his stamina up again to get off his skill before someone now kills Bran, he brings Summer right back at 60% hit points. Someone's got to kill Summer possibly twice, maybe even a third time, and then eventually kill Bran, or they have to target Bran first. And if they're targeting Bran first, they're leaving alone the other members of your team that are doing ice and all those things. Now you put him on a team with Ned. Ned gets his taunt on between his iconic and all that. He's got taunt half the battle. So very hard to target Bran and Summer. I think he's a strong character. I don't think he's an overpowered character. I think there'll be some interesting uses both for him and for the Night King now that they're trying to expand on this reinforceability that's always been in the game, but didn't really have synergy. It was just sort of like Thoros brings someone back. Okay, cool. Beric comes back. We've all got Beric. Beric gets defeated, comes back, gives you a couple more swings before he goes down. Great. Well, now they're trying to do things where, hey, when these characters come back, they're triggering something that could be pretty powerful. So while I like Bran, I think he's fairly strong. The reason I chased him, like I said in the prior video, is they had the proving grounds, and when you get through the proving grounds, you get two legendary gear pieces that are perfect fit for Bran. None of them are on Bran right now, um, but he is an idealist strategist, which is the exact same class and subclass as Melisandre, who's on my primary team. And the two slots that it came in were two slots that she didn't have subclass bonus legendary gear. So she's not green, but the subclass bonus on legendary gear is 15%. Once Bran gets high enough, if I start using Bran, obviously I'll put those legendary gear pieces on him. They're perfect fit pieces, which, as I've said numerous times in prior videos, if I'm torn between two characters, I'm leaning toward the one with the proving grounds because who doesn't want a couple of perfect fit pieces of legendary gear? That being said, boy, I wish the proving ground was on the Night King because I really think the Night King is a lot better. I think the Night King is a lot better than Bran. I think it opens up the door to a lot more combination, even being factionless, which maybe the factions aren't going to be. I don't know if they're going to be more important, less important when the changes come in, whenever they come in, but I think there's a lot of interesting things you could do with the Night King, and I think there's a ton of interesting things you could do with the Night King and Bran. And as a free to play or light spender, do you have the ability to get both? Now, with the raised level caps, I'll end on this. Really liking the raised level caps. It was such a huge benefit to the non-whales and the non-spenders in the game. And I saw some people complaining that they couldn't, oh, I can't level my people up fast enough. I need bread and I need silver. I just said to them, guys, this is a change they made that hurts the whales. It hurts their revenue stream. The people that spend already have characters at 350. So with the new level caps, a 3-star character you can level all the way up to 250. Prior to that change, you could only level to 150. Those 100 levels make a huge difference. Now, yes, with less stars, maybe you don't have as strong of a passive or a leadership ability. Your skill level isn't going to be as high. Understood, but you're usable. So I'm trying to get Bran to 5, and if I can get my Night King, the Night King's got his own trial where every few weeks we're going to get 10 shards. I'd like to get a little more of him. Like if I could even get him to 3, I can level him all the way up to 250, and I can see how he works with Bran. And then you make a decision. Hey, is this a common? You could build a team around this and say, is this something I want to devote future resources to make them stronger? And you can make that decision before investing your green tokens and your gold and your other resources, only by getting someone, maybe even to 2-star, which is relatively easy. Maybe that's enough just to sort of test something out. And you test it maybe in the tower or in the campaign somewhere, just to kind of see what the synergy looks like. So in any event, that's what we've got from Bran Stark. Overall, I think you can tell from the tone of the video, I don't know, out of 10, maybe he's a 6, possibly a 7. Like that he's a Stark nuke, like that he's a green attacking character, like that he's got some uh, revivability. So, it might be good against like a Gold Viserion in Legendary Assault, who, when he does his swipe, he basically clears the field. Well, if I've gotten Bran at the summer by then, he kills summer, but now Bran comes back and I get a few more turns in. Maybe before the next swipe, I get enough green gems, I get back into summer, rinse and repeat. So maybe I could do a little bit of extra damage there. Comment below, let me know what you think about Bran Stark. Have a happy and healthy 2026.